We have one of the non-TUT sippers and Aggies in the room, Anita Gale, our gracious hostess. She was an associate technical fellow at the Boeing Company. She was involved in the vehicle payload and cargo integration program. She says she's retired mostly from the Space Shuttle activity, but she's co-founder of the Space Settlement Design Competitions since 1984. Huge undertaking, important now that we plan to move to someplace called the Moon and maybe Mars. She's the executive committee member for the National Space Society, an investor and board member in the Atlantis Educational Services and Elevate Space.
Elevate Space.
I should have guessed that. All companies at the Kennedy Space Center. AIAA Associate Fellow, Society of Women Engineers Fellow, a proprietor of the Party Palace. You're going to have to explain that.
Yes, we will.
Is it where we are now?
Yes.
There you go. She hails from University of Washington in Seattle. She has a BS in Aeronautics and Astronautics, a Master of Science in Aeronautics in 1974, and she was very active in student government and Tau Beta Pi. Anita, with no further ado.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Because we're at this location, we are actually at a private home, so the Right Climate Stuff team was looking for a more professional venue to hold this particular event, and just it's 2020, it's COVID. So the Right Climate Stuff team members have met here a number of times for board and organizing committee meetings, and Jim asked Anita, could we use your house to do this? And I said yes. And it's not the first time that this house has been used for a lot of very interesting stuff. My husband and I moved here in 2002. My husband is deceased now about 11 years. So I was asked to talk about my interesting day jobs, and I'm calling that stuff that happens in this house. So in the introduction, you heard space settlement design competitions. I'm going to tell you a lot about space settlement design competitions over the next few minutes. Tell you a little bit about National Space Society, and there were those two company names. I'll tell you a little bit about that. And then we call this place the Party Palace because a lot of things happen here. The house kind of named itself. My husband and I moved from Southern California, sold our house there. We're moving to Clear Lake, Texas. We bought a house with a view of Clear Lake. Well, a view if you got a view in Houston. Twice the size of the house in Southern California and less money. Space settlement design competitions. What this says on the title, and it seems to be obscured by the pictures, is Anita does stuff that causes kids to do this or do stuff like this. So there's an example of a kid that's falling asleep at a computer, and that timestamp in the lower, I think it says 3:49 in the morning. So literally, we get kids to be working all night on projects. So the person to look at here is you have the girl who's sitting with her forehead on her hand, and look behind her, and there's a kid literally, he's not passed out on the floor. This is about dawn at the Museum of Flight in Seattle, where we did a semifinalist competition. And that kid is just tired from working all night. He just flaked out right on the floor. Let's do the next one. I think we all know what this expression means. Oh my God. And despite the fact the shirt says California, that actually happened in India. And we'd like to thank David Chevron for these photos. What these kids produce, so you see up on the upper right, any of you who's worked a proposal has done this. We call it the wall walk, where you put all the slides for your presentation on the wall, and we've got that happening with the kids. And these are drawings that these kids do just in the course of a weekend. They start with, if they do it right, they start with nothing. We give them a request for a proposal on a Saturday morning. They're presenting Sunday morning. What a space settlement design competition is an industry simulation game. And we literally, every decision we make about running space settlement design competitions is based on how industry works, and most particularly industry proposal teams. And I've worked a lot of industry proposal teams. The long hours, the not enough time to do everything, not enough page count, and all those things, request for proposal, it's a little bit obscure. We do all those things to the kids. We call it tormenting kids. These are high school kids. We even tell the kids we're tormenting kids, and they laugh and say, torment me some more, because they really love it. And we literally get alumni of the competition coming back as volunteers, just paying it forward. We divide kids into companies. If we get 200 kids, there are 4 companies. 50 kids per company. At the finals, we actually have over 60 in a company. And they need to figure out how to work in an organization chart and become a seamless team in a matter of hours. And actually looking around the room, we have 10 people running this Zoom conference from this house. 4 of us are from the design competition, and actually we're using a technique we use to run the Space Settlement Design Competition finals at the end of July at Kennedy Space Center. We're using that technique here, having a core team operating the whole operation from here in Houston, actually Nassau Bay. We write what we call future history. We set this in the future, and we get a response rate. When we do surveys, we ask the kids some standard questions that are asked in STEM events: science, technology, engineering, and math. And I'll see programs where people say, if I just get one kid interested in science, I've done what I need to do. We'll have 200 kids, and 90% or more of them say that literally the competition changed their life. Now I know why I need to study math and science. So we have a very successful program, as proved by some of the surveys we take, and the fact that we have volunteers coming back and people write to me saying, you changed my life. So we say organization chart. This looks more like a very abbreviated organization chart from the 1970s, early 80s, before matrix management was invented. We basically gear all the presentation materials to these 4 departments, which are structural engineering, operations engineering, human engineering, and automation engineering, and we can fit all the requirements for living in space into these 4 departments. We also have a marketing and sales department, and this would be for each student company, and they actually put the briefing together, check to make sure that all the RFP points are met, all that kind of stuff, putting the story together. So this is an example of a request for proposals. Actually, this is I know you can't read what's on the left. It just gives you an idea. We pack text. It's the wall of text thing going on. This is actually for a habitat design. For the full-blown space settlement designs, the RFPs are 4 pages long, with a lot of requirements packed in, a lot of intertwining of requirements, and you can see it. There's a basic structure of the requirements, and each of the departments has basically equal responsibility and equal scoring. This is actually a briefing chart that we show the kids. So we tell them, we're creating for you a real experience. You need to learn management, teamwork, communications. Even though it looks like a technical game and they're creating a technical design, what they're really learning is industry skills. Our alumni come back to us and tell us they learn industry skills in a weekend with a design competition. They don't even learn in business school and college, because teamwork and communication and working in an organization chart are really not taught certainly not in high schools and not in college either, is what we see. We have been talking for years, or writing for years, our future history with infrastructure in space, all over the inner solar system, basically progress in space being led by companies, consortiums, and been talking about economics of any installation where people are living in space. And we are starting to hear these words that we've been saying in the design competition. We're starting to hear that in industry just in the last few years. Infrastructure wasn't even a word that you heard about space until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I actually remember the first conference where I heard the word, and it was somebody on a panel seeing me in the room, and he said, Anita's in the room, I have to say the word infrastructure. Next one, please. And it is international, so we have semifinals all around the world. We're working on getting our 3rd region established in the United States. But when we do the finals, obviously this year we didn't have it in person at Kennedy Space Center. We did a virtual finals that had people all around the world, not just kids participating, but volunteers as well, all around the world. So kids literally could contact someone who was a volunteer any time of the day or night. It was amazing. And we pack all this into a weekend. So this is a standard semifinal schedule. Students come on a Friday night. They know basically you're doing something on the moon, you're doing a habitat on Mars, you're doing something in Earth orbit, you're doing a cruise ship between Earth orbit and Mars, you're doing an Aldrin cycler, you're on Mercury or Venus. They know the basic scenario, but they don't get the request for proposal until Saturday morning. And by Sunday morning, less than 24 hours later, they are presenting briefing charts. And it is so fun to watch them come in on a Friday evening, and it's a bunch of gangly teenagers. I'm seeing smiles from volunteers here who see this. Bunch of gangly teenagers, and by Sunday morning, some of them come in suits, and they're presenting, and and attempting to be adults, and it's charming. It's really amazing, and they do a fabulous job. We have a chronology of scenarios. Now, there's a reason for this. First of all, now I don't think anything could be much more exciting than designing a space settlement. You never get it right the first time. But kids will say, oh, I did that one already. It's boring. So we have a chronology, a 5-year chronology, where the first 2 years were around the moon and cislunar space, and years 3 and 4 were around Mars and the asteroid belt, and year 5, we got out to Mercury and Venus. And actually, Venus is pretty exciting. So the conditions there are so bizarre. Any of you who've read Atlas Shrugged will recognize where we got the name. We say because of we invent stuff. We say because of the bizarre conditions on Mercury, there's an ore there that we call reardonium, and it's like what you called in engineering school impossibilium or unobtainium, and it even has the blue-green color from Reardon metal in Atlas Shrugged. And once you have that, then you can sell that, make better engines, and you have the capability to actually live on Venus. So we get pretty wild with these scenarios. Each year, so remember, 5 years. Each year we write 5 different scenarios, 5 requests for proposals. Literally, we have 25 running scenarios, different RFPs. So if a kid, for some reason, does design competitions 5 years, they will not see the same scenario twice. When we update the scenarios, when it's 5 years later, we're doing the quote-unquote same scenario, we actually change it enough so that this is going to sound politically incorrect, but there are schools in India that literally keep a record of all of the requests for proposal they've seen from us, and their kids try to pre-design stuff because it's so important for them to win. For the Americans and the Europeans, it's all about the experience. For the Indians, it's about the winning. I mean, we see this. I'm not being rude or anything like that. It really is true. So they try to design stuff before they get to the competition, and my job is to predict what they're going to design and write the RFP so that is non-compliant. And I can tell when they did pre-design stuff, and we criticize them for it. We embarrass them about that. We also see differences in the school systems. The Indian and Pakistanis, and yes, we get Indian and Pakistani kids working together. Now that's really cool. That's Nobel Prize winning stuff, maybe. We'll where was I going with that? Indian and Pakistani school system. They emphasize that the way to solve problems is the way the teacher or professor taught you to solve it. And if that's the way the British did it 160 years ago, that's the right way to do it. We emphasize innovation and creativity. And these kids in Asia have always been able to force themselves to learn anything that they needed to learn to pass the test. But you don't learn innovation and creativity that way. So it's so much, it's diabolical fun to watch them trying to force themselves to be creative. Some of the results are very entertaining for us, not so much for them. But they will come and ask a series of questions, and I can tell they're asking, what's the design that I'm looking for? And I really don't know. And I'll tell them, look, I'm the customer, you're the contractor. If I knew how to get what I want in this RFP, I wouldn't need you now, would I? And then they slink away. So it's very much like real life. And we have several documents that define scenarios. We actually predict in the future histories something that I see going on right now at the conferences I attend. I can name names. There are people right now who are working the economics and chemistry of producing commodities on the moon with Lunar Materials to sell in space. You're not going to have to invent your own brand new water system. You're not going to have to invent your own new recycling system. You're not going to have to invent your new toilet. And one just flew, yesterday? Those are going to be commodities. There will be like a Home Depot of space on the moon. And you need toilet paper, there's somebody making toilet paper. And that's really important, toilet paper. So this is a partial list of the kinds of subcontractors we offer. So the kids don't need to work on how am I going to make toilet paper. There's a subcontractor for that. I've highlighted that one in the middle, litigation limiters. We have, each company has a company description. And this litigation limiters is a way where all of the companies are in a consortium and they have agreements that they can buy and sell each other's products and they don't have to negotiate between companies. In the early days, kids literally, the kid presidents of companies would negotiate, well, I want to have your launch vehicle and I want to have your solar power satellite. And their kids are unreasonable. So that's that's most of the volunteer activity that happens in this house. There's also, this is a node for the National Space Society. I am a member of the board of directors, elected member of the board of directors of the National Space Society, which is arguably the premier organization in the world, and it is global despite the fact it says national, premier organization in the world for advocating people living in space and space settlements. And Gerard O'Neill, the space settlement guy from the 1970s, is the founders of one of the legacy organizations. The other, that was the L5 Society. The other legacy organization was the National Space Institute, founded by Wernher von Braun. Over the years in the 1990s, it was mostly the advocates who were running NSS, and there were some pretty weird ideas that were coming out. And in the past few years, some of us engineers are infiltrating National Space Society, so we're getting more engineers on the board and in leadership. And one of our goals is to improve relationships between National Space Society and AIAA. And actually, AIAA is getting they're looking in the now, they're looking at 10 years hence, not really emphasizing space settlements. So a lot of the, what we call the space settlement technical community members are migrating to National Space Society. And we are getting some good papers coming out. There is a space settlement journal that's peer reviewed. I'm on the peer review committee. I'm the secretary of NSS. That's an executive committee position. NSS is almost entirely volunteer run, so I'm not just stupidvising some paid person taking minutes. I'm taking the minutes and archiving and keeping track of some of the formal relationships for the organization. And I'm on conference committees and do a lot of stuff. So, in fact, there's probably more I do for NSS than I remember. It's just I get an email. Oh, I got to do that too. I mentioned two companies, or we mentioned in the introduction two companies, Atlantis Educational Services and Elevate Space. Atlantis Educational Services literally started at the dining room table I'm looking at right now. And it's not the only company that started at that dining table or has board meetings at that dining room table. A co-founder, a partner in Atlantis Educational Services started an educational travel business in India. And we won't go into the whole history, but we have students from India, from the Middle East, from Latin America, from places in the United States, coming to Kennedy Space Center to learn about, we mostly do water rockets and weather balloons and robots. And we don't use the standard stuff you can buy on the internet for weather balloon packages. We have our own stuff that's custom designed. And actually Elevate Space was started because it was Omaha Public Schools had some folks visiting we're in the Center for Space Education at Kennedy Space Center at the Visitor Complex. And Omaha Public Schools saw some of the teaching tools, especially, we literally have a water rocket test facility that you can put on a table inside a classroom. It's in a plexiglass container and literally, quote unquote, launch the rocket inside the classroom and collect data from it. So there's water spraying all over and noise, and then a computer starts pumping about 10 lines of data for characterizing the engine performance. And Omaha Public Schools said, we have new science standards. This is the first time we found anything that will enable us to teach the new standards. So that's one of the businesses that is involved with this house. I think this is the last slide. And we do call this place the Party Palace. So we have done a lot of things. So we've had parties, gatherings for local chapters of organizations, AIAA Society. I own 3 J-24 racing sailboats. I have a skipper for each one. The fleet occasionally meets here. When they have regattas in Houston, they'll come here, party, drink my booze. We have salmon barbecues for the University of Washington Alumni Association here at the house. We ship in salmon from the Pike Place Market. Oh, it's so yummy. And a lot of these things, like the parties, with COVID, we're not doing as many events here. Actually, this is the first event here since March, what we're doing here. And of course, we have TRCS, the Right Climate Stuff team meets here with board meetings, and we're doing this Zoom meeting here too. So this is another part of the history of this house. And we've had birthdays, engagements, a wedding here, which is really cool. And 2 of the other volunteers here were at that wedding, and we all remember that. Had memorial for my husband when he passed away, was here at the house. We couldn't think of a better place. One of the Apollo 11 anniversary events that was run by National Space Society happened actually in that corner. And we've had the house on home tours twice for the local Houston Symphony League. So one of their money makers is to do home tours, and we've been on the home tour twice. And we have two big parties most years. We didn't do July 4th this year because of COVID, but normally July 4th we have a great view of fireworks, and Christmas boat parade we have a great view of decorated boats on Clear Lake, and fireworks that the city of Nassau Bay does on the peninsula in front of the house. So that actually is the end of the time. The next slide says I can answer questions. So it's up to the boss if we want to take any more questions.
Have any of your commercial interests out there actually taken the results of your school and try to commercialize those?
Please repeat the question.
Okay. The question was about whether any commercial interests actually use the results from the design competition. And that really is an interesting question, because the kids want to think that their designs would get into real use. We've maybe seen out of over 30 years of doing these, and we're now doing, 8 a year, 8, 10, I don't even count anymore. We've probably seen 2 patentable ideas that didn't get patented. But for the most part, they're not really creating much that's new. It's really all about the process and learning how industry works. So they want to think they're doing something new, but we really guide them into technologies. So they're not doing much that we haven't seen before. Thank you for the question. Okay, yes, another one?
Yeah, I got a question, Anita. If anyone, by the way, we're recording all this and we're going to put it on our website, so a lot more people are going to hear it than just a few we have this morning. The question is, if someone is interested in getting finding out more about your day jobs and want to either donate, contribute, or just learn more about it, it's very fascinating. How do they find you?
You're welcome to distribute my email address.
Yeah.
And actually, if anybody wants to run a space settlement design competition, it wouldn't be a semifinal, but we have a parallel, we call them one-off set of events called tournament. And if you have a Rotary Club or an AIAA chapter or something, or a school district that wants to put kids through this experience, we'll be happy to, you can just email me and we'll be happy to get you in line with our volunteers and we can run an event for your kids.
We'll take your email to the
Okay, very good.
posting
All right, yep.
website.
All right, thank you. And if you're in the Houston area and you want an event venue, there's one right here. Aw.
Sounds good, yeah.
Yeah.